Hey, thanks for coming by Tori Magoo 44. Today is March 13th. It's L. Ron Hubbard's birthday for people that are speaking out against the abuses of the Church of Scientology. This is one more con. And I'll tell you about it in a minute. But first of all, I wanted to thank everyone who answered my video from yesterday. I really appreciate all of your input, and I am going to probably just incorporate it. I may start another site. We'll see. I don't really know how yet, so I'm checking into it. But anyway, thank you for your views. I greatly appreciate them. It really helped me a bunch. So what's going on with L. Ron Hubbard's birthday? First of all, there's some excellent books out for people regarding L. Ron Hubbard that I can't recommend them enough. They're fantastic. One of them is Russell Miller's Barefaced Messiah, a true story about L. Ron Hubbard. Russell Miller was never even in Scientology, but he wanted to write about Hubbard, and it's very interesting to read what a con man this guy was from very, very early on. A couple of examples that I'm just reading about now. I never read the book. You can't read it when you're in Scientology. It's a high crime to read anything critical of Scientology, basically. You have to turn yourself into ethics and get handled and, whatever. So most people don't read those books. And I still haven't, even since I've been out. Not because because I adore Hubbard or something. I was just like, I've had enough of the guy. I was in for 30 years, enough, right? Once I finished, I was done. And I really didn't care about all the rest of the ins and outs of L. Ron Hubbard until I saw the thing at Caltech about Parsons, Crowley, and Hubbard. And it did show just a little taste. It was about a 2-hour taste of those early days with mostly Parsons and Crowley and a little bit of Hubbard. But it got me wondering, I really wanted to read about the early days. And I'm telling you, it is fantastic. This is a great book about it. A couple of the cons I've read about, I'm just starting in the book, right? But a couple of them to give you an idea. Hubbard, when he was young, wasn't very successful. He wanted to be a writer. He finally sold one of his books, made $3,000, had married this lady, Polly, splits across the country to go to New York to be the adventurer. What does he do with the $3,000? He buys a boat, right? He calls up Polly to tell her he bought this boat. She's like, a boat? We have a baby, we have bills, we have tons of bills. We need to handle this. And Mr. Ethics himself is like, don't worry about it. We'll be on our way. By the time they really catch up with this, they'll be fine. Don't worry about it. The next thing he does, he's married to Polly, right? The first person that most people in Scientology know L. Ron Hubbard married was Sarah, right? That's because he never divorced Polly. He married Sarah while he's married to Polly. It goes on and on and on. So it's a really good book to read. But to give you an idea, why do they have this huge exorbitant event now, the birthday game of L. Ron Hubbard? Well, let's go look back to how it started. This is my little drawing of the original. Here's Hubbard, 1950. There's Ron. Buy my book, Dianetics, and here's his little public, right? I know about this because my ex-husband's parents went to those, what they called congresses, right, where Hubbard was talking, and they'd go home and try to use Dianetics, right? And those are some funny stories in itself, which someday I'll tell you. But anyway, that started it. I'm going to put up a link here with the history of Scientology so you can kind of see year by year what happened. And check it out. It's pretty interesting. But next, by the time I get in, 1969, here's how it looks now. Here's Ron, which the green is pretty much for management, right? There's just a little bit of management in Ron. All the rest of this is tech, meaning the stuff that would supposedly help people, right? It was all their technology, right? With all these missions on the bottom. Tons of them, all around the world. And the missions at that time were their own private business. They had nothing to do with anything else. They ran them. They were sort of like a garden. They'd plant the seeds, get the people in, nurture them, and then eventually move them into what were the Church of Scientology, right? They made a lot of money at the mission. So in 1982, Greedy Hubbard says, I want some of that money. I started Scientology. I want a huge percentage of it. So now the missions that were their own businesses before, now they have to report up to what's called RTC, the Religious Technology Center. And this is the C organization. So now it's 180 degrees different than the missions, which were in their houses or their own buildings, but that was their own business, to now they are directly reporting to RTC, which had turned into this very, very strict, and you have to do this, this, and this, or else, they're going to assign you conditions and all this other stuff. So a ton of people dropped out. They were like, Bent Corden was one of the top mission holders, and he ended up leaving, wrote a book, L. Ron Hubbard, Messiah or Madman. All right. Now, I was in during this time when this book came out, and I was working for what's called RPR, Ron's Public Relations Office, which is basically to handle L. Ron Hubbard, and his name and make sure it's all okay. We were just setting up interviews with radio stations to get Dianetics to try to push it up to #1, right? They're very manipulative on this whole thing. They buy tons of books to push up the statistics. They'll do anything to get their statistics up. Which is why I laugh when Tommy Davis says, we have 8 million people. I'm one of those 8 million people, and I'm declared and expelled. And I know it isn't just me. There's tons and tons of people who are in the same boat. They're getting their PR, and they're counted as a Scientologist. They're not. I'm expelled, and I'm still getting letters from them. Okay, so anyway, Bent writes this book, right? And as I said, now, after that time with the Mission Holders Conference, I remember in the 80s this came out. It was called The Command Channels of Scientology. And here it was. It's like it went from mostly tech, which was what most of us got in for, to quote-unquote help other people with all these things here, to all of this being management. And I remember seeing this. It was like, and here was Flag, and St. Hill was like way down at the bottom, and just a couple of missions. All the rest of it was management, which is how it is to this day, which is why it's like flipped over. It's so different from what it was when we first got in, where people were really jumping, really having fun, helping each other. We thought we were winning at the time. And in the beginning, we probably were, but then it evolved, and the OT levels and all the rest, and, it's just gone on and on and on. You're not allowed to read any of these books when you're in Scientology. You can't read this book, and you can't read this book either. Now, what happened to that? When that book came out, all the radio stations said, we don't want to do any more interviews with anybody. We want to talk to L. Ron Hubbard Jr. or Ben Corden. And I was like, what's this? Because, of course, when you're in the Scientology Truman Show, you know nothing about this kind of stuff. That you're not supposed to read any of those books. It's a high crime. You don't watch any TV shows that are critical. I don't know how they're handling the internet now, but when I was in, they put a net nanny on the internet, so you could type in Scientology and their PR would come up, and the critical side. But we Scientologists would type in Scientology, and it was all just a piece of blue sky, right? So now this book comes out, and I'm like, what is this? L. Ron Hubbard Jr.? About his dad? And they said, don't worry, Troy, go home, come on back, we'll tell you what really happened. And then I come back the next day, and they have a notarized thing from L. Ron Hubbard Jr. saying, I never co-authored that book. I have no problems with my father, L. Ron Hubbard Jr. That kind of freaked me out, right? And I'm like, what is this? It's notarized. And they're like, see, we told you. All these critics are just liars, Tori. That's it. Now, I was what people who study cults call a true believer. I truly, truly believed in Scientology. And I trusted them. And I thought, okay, that must be true, right? Until I left. I escaped out in 2000, which I've made many, many videos about. But when I got out, I met some people, and I asked them, what happened with this? What happened with L. Ron Hubbard Jr.? And he was paid off overnight. They cut a deal with him. And I've met a ton of people who've been paid off. So that's where your money is going. All these thousands and millions of dollars. Yes, they buy their buildings. And yes, they pay off their legal funds. But when they cut off the mission holders in '82, a lot of the mission holders said, forget it. We like doing our own business. So that was the end of the gardening. And as you see, I remember being in and going, these FSMs, which are field staff members, which are people that are supposed to get people in, right? they never got new people in. And I used to say this to the executives. All they're doing is recycling the quote-unquote OTs over and over and over, selling them more and more stuff. And that's true to this day. And thus, they have less and less people. But when you go to these events, they are just exorbitant, huge, thousands of dollars to put on the L. Ron Hubbard birthday event. And it's a game they play all year long, trying to push up the statistics so that they can have their big game today and say who won the birthday game. And it's all designed to manipulate the people within so that they think it's really huge, it's really winning, it's really great, it's really hot, give us your money, you better do the next thing, right? You don't realize that when you're in. And I tell you this, get this book and read it. This is a great book on David Miscavige, Blown for Good. Mark Headley was up there working with him for 15 years recently. This is an excellent book, Barefaced Messiah, about L. Ron Hubbard, the con man, all right? And he doesn't call it the con man, but I do, because it really does go over how he was a con man from early on. You know, married to Polly, then he marries Sarah. Now he's married to 2 women at once. You know, that's just one of the many, many things that this guy did. And I'm just starting in the book. I didn't, like I said, I didn't really want to read it, but now I do. Now I'm getting into it. So, happy birthday to Ron. You're probably in hell if there is a hell. If you're not, who knows? Maybe you're returning as the Messiah. I can't wait to see it either way. It's a fun game. We are winning on this side. Thank you to everyone who is speaking out, picketing. If you want to picket today, go to whyweprotest.net, and that'll tell you where they're having pickets all around the world. And come picket. If you don't want to picket, another thing that I do is I have these little cards that I pass out that I give to people just with the critical websites on them. I have some here where here it is. Okay, I knew I had it here somewhere. I've been making all these different charts for you guys. Here you go. It's just a little business card. Find out about Scientology. It's worse than you think. And you know what? Most people, if I give it out to one person, there's 4 other people that say, "Can I get one of those?" I give it to them. Every once in a while here in LA, people say, we know how bad it is. I say, I understand. But you know what? These guys are actively always recruiting. So take it, and if one of your friends gets suckered into it, give them this card. And every person goes, deal, and they put it in their wallet. In Scientology, you try to dead agent that one. Because that's just facts, information. You can also tell people, just Google Scientology and read both sides. And ask yourself this, why can't Scientology say read both sides? That's one of the key questions on this. Why can't they? They can't. Because if people knew both sides, the party'd be over. All right? So there you go. Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy yourselves. I love you. And peace out. All right? Take care.